Legg denne telefonen med. Okay, welcome back. Welcome to this debate about media freedom in Eastern Europe and why this is something we should care about in Norway. This session will be streamed. My name is Amund Trellevik. I'm a journalist with the international journalist cooperative Investigate Europe. And I will say it's really a big honor for me to be here with some of the most courageous journalists from Europe. They go to work every day in countries where government actively work against freedom of the media, freedom of expression, and the right to work with critical and investigative journalism. So first, we are going to Hungary. We have today with us a man who is a CIA agent, a threat to state security, and he's also a part of the homosexual lobby, and a person who receives money from foreign powers to destabilize and destroy Hungary from the inside, all according to the state media controlled by the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. Szabolcs Panyi, welcome to the Norwegian Parliament. Do you think Viktor Orbán is watching this stream now?
Thank you very much for inviting me and this great introduction. As I told you in private, probably this is going to be cut out by the Hungarian propagandists who are following this stream, and it's going to be put on repeat as an advertisement attacking me, but regardless of that, thank you. The thing with Hungary is that they just try to ignore journalists as much as possible. The government and their proxies, basically they try to deplatform us. So that's why it's actually a very odd, weird thing for me to be invited to a parliament and speak here, because this would never happen in my own country.
Yeah, so you will not have an invitation to the Hungarian parliament to do a session on media freedom? No.
Well, actually, some of my colleagues got banned from the Hungarian parliament for some months or some years recently, so very unlikely.
Okay. Please explain for us, how is it that a country that is a member of the European Union, NATO, the European Community, the Council of Europe, threats freedom of expression so badly as in Hungary?
Well, the historic reason is that all of our countries in Central Eastern Europe only embraced free speech and freedom of expression and free media after our democratic transition. So our independent journalism and our freedom of speech is pretty new, pretty fragile. Our institutions are not yet stabilized. And honestly, most people just don't really appreciate all the freedoms that we received. And this gave way to politicians who can basically present this false dilemma that you can choose between freedom, human rights, freedom of expression, and existential stability. And that's what populist leaders like Viktor Orbán, the Prime Minister of Hungary, has been doing. He's been very successful, and part of his success is, and this is the reason why free media is threatened, is that he's basically trying to silence journalists, trying to silence independent journalists so that their own voters are not confronted with real facts, they're not confronted with stories about corruption, a lot of times related to the Prime Minister's own family.
But you are here, you work as an investigative journalist in Hungary. Can you explain to us how the Hungarian government tries to silence critical journalism?
Viktor Orbán came to power in 2010, and he had a clear plan in mind. He was very open about what he wants to do with the media. His belief is that media is just an arm of political parties, and this is how he treats his own media that he controls. And what he did is, first of all, he made sure that independent voices are being pushed back. He did this by using, for example, state-owned banks gave loans to proxies who bought up independent media outlets and then either closed them down or turned them into propaganda.
Okay.
By propaganda, I mean that they are directly controlled from a ministry, that editor-in-chiefs of more than 100 titles of radio, TV, weeklies, monthlies, dailies. Their editor-in-chiefs or their senior managers, they have weekly meetings at a ministry and they're getting briefed by a state secretary or by a minister himself. And then they are being told, like, what's the agenda for the next week.
Okay. Which story to publish?
Yeah, whom to attack, what slogans to use.
Uh-huh.
And this was a way to basically create a media sphere where the remainder of independent media can only reach less than half of Hungary's population. Which means that if I report on a story, obviously these editor-in-chiefs are not getting told to quote it or to run it in their own media. So our reach is pretty limited. It's mostly limited to those people who read online news.
You said who to attack. You yourself have been attacked by the state-controlled media in different ways. How to respond to that?
Well, it's not easy. I always consult with lawyers when something's getting published about me. As you said, I'm getting accused of being a CIA agent, an agent of George Soros, the Hungarian-American billionaire, a traitor, a liar, etc., etc. And the thing is that if you reply to such attacks, then of course it becomes a snowball. And
so you just ignore them?
Usually that's unfortunately the advice that we get from the lawyers, and also psychologically. So it's not just about trying to undermine your credibility. That's the most obvious reason for attacking journalists. So that a lot of readers or potential readers don't even read our articles, because if they see the name of the author on the top, they already know that it's a well-known liar. So why would we read that article? But it's also a psychological operation. They try to get under our skin. They try to put psychological pressure on us in hope that we would just stop what we're doing and leave the profession.
Do people believe in these accusations, these smear campaigns?
They do. The most hurtful personal experience I had is that my best friend's mother asked if I'm indeed a spy, if I'm conducting intelligence operations or influence operations in Hungary, because that's what she saw on TV being told about me. That's my best friend's mother, whom I've known since high school, and still it showed that this type of propaganda does have an influence on average people's beliefs about journalism.
Okay, thank you. Beata Balogova, you're from Slovakia. You're also an enemy of the state, according to the Prime Minister of your country. Explain to us. You are editor-in-chief of one of the biggest daily newspapers in Slovakia.
Yes, I am joining Szabolcs in the club, and we were called dirty anti-Slovak prostitutes, slimy snakes, idiots, and my newspaper is often called a flock of Soros swines for whom the water is boiling, and one day we will be poured that water on. And probably when Robert Fico won again and he came back to power, that was the day when he started boiling this water even more.
Yes, so the Prime Minister Fico, he were in power lately, and then he won the last election. Yeah. How often does he give interviews to your newspaper?
He hasn't given interview in 15 years.
Okay.
He don't talk to serious media. He doesn't respond questions. Even at press conferences, when we ask questions, he used the questions to hit back, and he says that I don't talk to anti-Slovak agents, and you are just lying, and no matter what I say, you write what you want. But he talks to disinformation channels now, and members of his government actually gave interviews to an internationally sought neo-Nazi who is hiding in Great Britain, Daniel Bombitz. And on his channel, our interior minister appeared, who actually should execute this man because he is charged with different crimes. And he used this channel to criticize his own policeman. So that's the image now. And actually, Robert Fico also appeared on the channel Rossija 1.
The state-controlled first channel in Russia.
Control and with the most vicious propagandist. And he offered himself to come to Moscow if Putin invites him to celebrate the big anniversary of the end of the Second World War. And this really shows how Robert Fico is building his propaganda army, because he's inspired by Viktor Orban, and he understands that without having a strong propaganda unit, he cannot really keep power.
Yeah, okay. But just explain for us, why should we in Norway care about what's happening in Slovakia? Small, tiny country, and I don't think people actually know where it's located.
Yeah, it's a meaningless country, seemingly, but I think that it is a test how European institutions care about values they declare to care about. Because now they have the Orban lesson. I mean, as Szabolcs explained, for years the European Union allowed Viktor Orban to capture media, to kill the rule of law. And now they are declaring that something has changed. Now we have the Media Freedom Act, and it's really the point where Slovakia will be a litmus test, like how Europe and how those organizations.
What is the Media Freedom Act? Explain for us.
The European Media Freedom Act was passed this year, and it will be valid next year. And it's a global act that basically claims that the European institutions will make sure that public service media is not captured, that they will. They won't allow the monitoring of journalists, tapping into journalists' phone calls, that they will care more about media ownership transparency. So it's a set of rules that basically are part of the basic European standards when it comes to freedom of speech and media freedom. And I have to say that Slovakia is already violating several of its provisions. And I think that even for people in Norway, the thing is that there is no such thing as media freedom in Slovakia or media freedom in Hungary anymore, because we see that populists and autocrats just learning very fast from each other. And just as Robert Fico learned everything from Viktor Orban, someone here might get inspired one day. Okay,
let's see. But you run the biggest daily in Slovakia, but the government doesn't want to talk to you. How is that? How do you do news coverage then?
We can still recall ministers. So that's a thing that when we write a story and discover corruption, Robert Fico cannot afford to ignore us right now. So it's more difficult because we have to really try to find data and try to find answers, but we still do our news reporting, and at some point one minister or other minister is still talking to us. So it's slightly still better than in Hungary, that the government cannot ignore us. And that's why Robert Fico is building his own propaganda empire, because he really wants to ignore us. And also the difference is that he personally attacks us. Viktor Orban is not naming journalists at press conferences. Robert Fico still does.
Okay, so he's naming you.
He did in the past. He named me, and he threatened to sue me for an interview I gave to a Austrian daily, and he's naming journalists, and that's that way he's exposing them to possible or probable attacks, and he's not acknowledging that.
Do you think they are watching the stream now?
He personally not, but he has his people, so if they are efficient enough, they find out that I'm speaking somewhere.
Yeah, then we can turn to one of the most saddest moments for Slovak journalism lately. Back in 2018, one of the country's most clever investigative journalists, Jan Kuciak, was murdered in his home. His fiancée was also murdered. There is a documentary about this murder also on Norwegian TV. Can you just explain how have this murder shaped the Slovak community today?
I really thought that this murder will be such a warning sign, and I genuinely thought that the attacks against journalists will, if not disappear, but it will weaken in the public arena. But it happened otherwise. I mean, today, the attacks and the verbal attacks and the attacks by armies of trolls has never been worse. So I think that our politicians have not learned a thing from the murder of Jan Kuciak.
He actually had, like the Prime Minister Fico back then, had to resign because of this murder.
Yes.
And now he's back.
He's back and he's trying to reshape that story. He said that someone was trying to overthrow his government and that George Soros was organizing the protests against him. And he, as you might know, our Prime Minister was assassinated. He fortunately survived, but he used for his assassination the story that we journalists were inspiring the shooter. But at the time when Jan Kuciak was killed, he denied that the public atmosphere could lead to a murder, but now he's saying that because it works for his benefit. So basically he says that because of critical reporting, the shooter was influenced, brainwashed, and that's why he attacked him. And he very openly, after his recovery, that was one of his first statements, he said that I know you are sad, critical media and liberal media, but I am back.
He's back. Is anybody convicted for the murder?
Yes, the shooters, for the murder, the shooters were sentenced, but the mastermind have not been convicted yet. He is sentenced for a different crime, so he's in jail. I'm saying as though I was sure who he is, but we journalists and investigative journalists, we believe that Marian Kočner is behind the murder of Jan Kuciak.
Yeah, and he's also named in the documentary.
Of course.
Yes, he is. Okay, we can. I just want to ask, how will Donald Trump's return to the White House affect these leaders in Hungary and Slovakia?
Well, in Hungary, certainly Viktor Orbán has put a lot of effort into networking with Donald Trump and his people, so he's over the moon now that Trump is back. Mostly what he expects from the United States, from the next administration, is that he's going to get a free card to do whatever he wants with Hungary, because currently the current administration has been at least vocally criticizing Viktor Orbán's... Biden administration has been criticizing, of course, Viktor Orbán's crackdown on free media or the rule of law. Also, Radio Free Europe has relaunched its operations in Hungary as a reaction to the deteriorating press freedom situation. There's been rumors that also in Slovakia there were plans to relaunch Radio Free Europe. And what I expect is that Viktor Orbán will lobby the new US administration to cut funding for any kind of support for civil society, not just in Hungary, but also in Slovakia and in Central Europe. And also funding for supporting journalism.
And in Slovakia?
Robert Fico is having a little schizophrenia here, because so far he was always saying that the hostile American forces are influencing us, and now he will have to change his narrative for the voters who are not that flexible and might not understand that why are now the bad Americans suddenly friends. Also, he went to China recently, and he was giving a big press conference how Slovakia is building a new relationship with China. Donald Trump might not like that. So I think that Robert Fico is now still figuring out like how to remodel or reshape his narrative. But yes, in terms of the victory of populism and denying facts, denying science, this is something that might encourage him as well.
Did he get an invitation from Putin to go to Moscow on the 9th of May?
I believe he has not. And
Okay.
he's very envious of Viktor Orban, that Viktor Orban can visit Putin anytime.
Yeah, so that's the
He
open
has-
door policy with Viktor Orban and Putin, maybe. And then he had to pray on Russian state TV to have a visit with Putin. Okay, okay, let's see. He used to be a far left politician, but now he's somewhere in between populist right, or what?
Originally, yes, he claimed to be a leftist Democrat, but that was never the case. I think Robert Fico is like a Medusa. He fills out any space where he hopes to harvest votes. And right now he is more far right because he had, after he had to step down, he had to find a new voter. And basically he was fishing in the lakes of extremists. And that's a very sad story because he's legitimizing narratives that are being used by neo-Nazis in Slovakia.
In which way?
He is attacking minorities. He completely denies the right of LGBTQ people to have a normal life. He's also very pro-Russian, and I believe that he genuinely feels that way. But in every other thing, I don't think that Robert Fico has any internal issue with LGBTQ people. I think his mindset is to get anything into his agenda that might work for him, and that's why those definitions no longer work. I can't even say where to position him because that doesn't matter anymore. He's an architect of power, and he would use anything that works for his benefit.
Szabolcs.
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that such leaders are so flexible when it comes to ideology that it makes no sense to label them. I mean, Viktor Orban famously started out almost as an anarchist, a very radical liberal. Then he turned to be a moderate, right-wing, conservative politician, and now he's like populist, pro-Russian, autocrat, basically. And it's the same person. And as Beata said about Robert Fico, I also believe that whatever Viktor Orban was preaching throughout his career, he did not really believe in that. All he wanted to be is either to be elected to power or to get re-elected. And he's constantly tapping into the sentiments of the population and tries to shape his policies accordingly. And of course, he realized, just like Fico realized, that working with people's fear, with the existential fear of anxieties about the economy, inflation, or the pandemic, it's the easiest way to get support.
How long can he stay in power?
In Hungary, there's no term limit for a prime minister, and I think that's the same for Slovakia.
It's the same in Norway as well. But he came to power in 2010.
Yeah. He's publicly saying that he has plans until 2030 or 2034.
Okay.
So he's clearly not thinking about stepping down. He's just 60-something, so he's still relatively young.
Very young, yeah.
Compared to Joe Biden,
Putin,
Trump,
and
of
yeah,
course.
Trump, yeah. Okay.
If I just can make one more comment, because we have forgotten to mention the relationship to Ukraine, and that's something that for me it's a key issue also in terms of relationship with Trump. And Robert Fico is a peace fighter. He says that he wants to reinstall peace, but he has never shown any plan. So what they are saying is that that for them the plan is that Ukraine gives up its territories and then peace will come. And that also shows that basically Robert Fico is in deep conflict, also internal but external conflict with other European countries, and he's trying to navigate that by double talk. So if he visits one day the Norwegian parliament, if you invite him, so he will be telling things that might seem appealing and normal, but in a moment he comes back to Slovakia, he would say, okay, I told them that what
Okay.
that we need fight for.
We'll see if he comes to Oslo first before he goes to Moscow. If we look at the broader region, I mean Hungary, Slovakia, and the whole region, your governments came to power through elections, free and fair elections, so to say, and now they're using the democracy to suppress democracy. How to counter this trend? You mentioned to me on phone last week that this is a kind of a crucial moment for this region because other people might learn from Slovakia and Hungary. Which one is the first in line to learn?
Sorry?
Which one is the first in line to learn from Slovakia?
Czech Republic.
Czech Republic? Okay.
They have elections very soon, and they also have a wannabe autocrat, Andrej Babiš, who is using a very same terminology and narrative. And I think that, yes, that's a warning sign that in completely democratic manners you can reinstall a new system which fakes to be democratic. It's very selective. It picks up all the benefits of democracy but doesn't go all the way to enforce them. And of course, in Slovakia, our electoral system is still protecting us because we have proportional electoral system, unlike Hungary. But Robert Fico is already talking about the idea of changing the electoral law.
Okay.
And that would be a very dangerous
To let him stay in power for more.
Oh yeah, like why should he every 4 years to make effort, to appeal to voters if there is a way, like for Viktor Orban, just go on and make sure he. But yes, the point you said the point that this is possible in Europe, and I think that the European Union has the tools, the money. They don't listen to anything else.
They don't listen to the European Union either.
No, but if there is a threat of cutting European funding, because that's their...
Yeah, but they did that in Hungary and they didn't apply, they didn't care.
Well, it does hurt the Hungarian government's popularity and also, of course, does hurt the Hungarian economy that around like 20 billion euros are frozen in funds. Some have been unfrozen.
Yeah,
but
they receive some money.
Yes. But what I wanted to say regarding your question about the region is that the economic foundations of media throughout Central Eastern Europe are very fragile. As I said, these are relatively new democracies. The middle class is quite thin. So that segment of the population that can sustain serious independent journalism is just not big enough. Which also means that traditionally, after the democratic transitions in these countries, foreign investors purchased media throughout the region, including from Nordic countries, but also from Germany. And the lesson that we learn is that these seemingly decent foreign owners coming from Finland or Germany were much eager to do business with Viktor Orban's government than to support independent media. So when they received, for example, an offer to sell their assets to pro-government proxies, knowing that those media outlets would be turned into propaganda, they were eager to do business and sell it at a good price to the Hungarian
Okay, so maybe some people from Norway should buy some media outlets in Hungary and just stick to them.
Well,
I see there are some foundations in the audience.
Norway, what I just quickly want to mention is that this whole attack on Hungarian civil society, it actually started with Norway back 10 years ago when the EE and Norway Grants Funds local distributors, it was an organization that was distributing the Norway grant funds to Hungarian civil society. Their offices were raided by the police, and that's when this pressure campaign on so-called foreign agents, foreign-funded NGOs started.
Yeah, well, I just stick to that because how should foreigners support independent media in Hungary and Slovakia? As far as I know, there is legislation, they're working on legislation making it's illegal to receive foreign funding for medias. So this is quite dangerous.
So first, since 2014, it was like, besides the raid, it was like a rhetorical campaign labeling us as foreign agents.
Mm-hmm.
But now this year, the Orbán government established a new office, a state authority, that's now publishing reports naming and shaming independent journalists as US intelligence agents, basically. That's what happened to
US.
US, yes.
Yeah.
So it's a very anti-American angle they have, and it's basically the copy-paste of Soviet rhetorics. And once a state authority like this one publishes these reports, what's going to be the next step? Obviously, other authorities will act upon these official reports that if a journalist is, or an outlet is stated in an official report as a foreign agent, then the counterintelligence, then the prosecutor's office, then the police have to intervene at some point.
If I may add to the question how international community can help, I think I've said that several times that the situation have completely changed. Minor grants to support like 1 or 2 investigative stories doesn't work anymore. And even if you talk to journalists in Hungary or Slovakia, they wouldn't even apply because it takes so much administration. Mm-hmm. And you need to support, you need to make sure that they are also big, strong media. And that's the way to go because, like small media can be locked into a golden cage. And then they can survive, but they are not able to talk to the regions, they are not able to talk to the wide society. The other point is that investors who have other interests except media are very fragile. Like in Slovakia, the biggest independent private television channel has an investor, a Czech investor, who is also investing into highway toll collection, telecom, banking, and Robert Fico, the government, has its way to put pressure on that investor, which already reflected in changes in the broadcast of the television. So I think that the way is to have strong, bigger funds that join together, and it's like funding is no longer like a competition that show up how many projects we supported, but really making an impact. I think that's the way to go.
Okay, then I would like to invite 2 more guests to the stage. Member of Parliament Lise Christoffersen and Member of Parliament Siv Mossleth. Where are you? Okay, please welcome to the stage. And we will also open the floor to the audience. Just keep in mind that this will be streamed, so don't say anything stupid. Okay. Yes. Lise Christoffersen, member of the Labour Party. They talked about how to support independent media in Hungary and Slovakia. Is that something that Norway should facilitate for? I mean, buy independent medias in these countries and support them, do you think?
Yes, of course, I think so. And as you mentioned, I'm a member of Parliament, but I'm also a member of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe.
Yes.
And of course, we take part in the debates in the Parliamentary Assembly, and I know that the 2 co-rapporteurs for Hungary are preparing a report now, which is going to be debated next year, and we have to engage in that debate.
Are you concerned what they told you about the situation for independent journalists in Hungary and Slovakia?
Yes, I'm very concerned, and it's not only those 2 countries. No. You now see it everywhere. The Council of Europe is a human rights organization, and we have members from all over Europe except Belarus and Russia. But we see a negative development within our member countries. In Hungary, in Slovakia, in Turkey. Myself, I'm a co-rapporteur for Azerbaijan, and there is really going in the wrong
that's a
direction.
different story. But you mentioned North Macedonia, Georgia, Serbia, Hungary, but all these are still members of the Council of Europe. Besides Azerbaijan, they are on a freezing point now.
Azerbaijan is under some sanctions from the Parliamentary Assembly.
But why are Hungary a member of Council of Europe when they totally violates freedom of expression?
I think maybe we should go back to Glasnost, where everyone was hoping for a new democratic development in Europe, and the countries that previously was behind the Iron Curtain was invited in as members, and as being members, they obliged themselves to human rights, democracy.
But they don't follow.
And they were subjected to monitoring procedures and reports to the Parliamentary Assembly, and they also got help to improve their legislation, and some improvements. We have seen some improvements, but these days there is a movement in the wrong direction. And I think we have to continue to monitor, to discuss, to try to push them in the right direction again.
But just explain for us, if the Council of Europe tells Hungary to stop suppressing independent journalists, what can Hungary say? Oh, of course we will do that, or what?
Of course, the whole system within the Council of Europe is based on cooperation. And if they don't want to cooperate, like we have seen in Azerbaijan these days, we can sanction, like we saw with Russia when they attacked Ukraine. They were thrown out of the organization. Of course, that's they had reached.
Didn't they pull out on their own hand first? Yeah, okay, that's a different story. Siv Mossleth from the Center Party. You just came back from elections in Georgia and in the US. Yeah, how was that?
First, I want to thank you for visit the Storting, and thank you for tell us your views and sharing your knowledge. And it's true, I've been an election observer in US, in Georgia, in Serbia, in North Macedonia, and the reason that I like and think it's important to be an observer is because free and fair elections is the most important issue in a democracy, and the freedom of the media is also very, very important. And somebody needs to look and report the situation in these countries. In the US, the OSCE and ODIHR, their report said that the situation on the election day was very well administrated, but in the long term and in the campaign, they pointed to the fact that it's been a lot of disinformation, fake news, polarizations, and I think Reporters Without Borders are doing a very important job. They highlight the situation in the world for media freedom, and Norway is in the top of that list, and I think that gives us a responsibility to share our situation for underline how important free and editor-controlled media is. And in Norway also, the state is founding small local newspapers. In my region, I have
Should we do that abroad as well? Should we do that in Hungary or in Slovakia?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's important, but it's difficult because the authoritarian leadership is just like a sickness. If you have one, you have 2 and 3, and
it's a disease, so you need some proper medicine then. So maybe a funding of local and regional newspapers in your countries could be a good solution. Do you want foreign funding, or is that like a no-go? I mean, money from the Norwegian Parliament.
It depends on how the money is distributed. Certainly, like most media wouldn't take funding directly from a government, but through a proxy, like if the government gives money to a trusted foundation which distributes it and doesn't require anything in return, then it works.
Okay. Hungary?
Well, I would like to have as many Hungarian and also foreign individual supporters, because we also have like expats living in Budapest, for example, who support our media, have as many individual small donors as possible, because currently the US elections, for example, shows that now a new administration is coming in, and it's expected that they're just going to cut funding for programs that the previous administration was supporting. We cannot rely on foreign governments and the changes there. What we can rely on is the readers and our own citizens, and convince them why it's in their interest to support independent journalism.
This is a question both to Lise and Siv. The European Union doesn't like the development in Hungary and Slovakia, the Council of Europe not, but nobody cares. I mean, the governments, they don't care. What to do then? Yeah, Lise?
I think that we just have to continue to put pressure on them. We have to raise the issues over and over again, because I think in the long term, it will be a disadvantage to those governments acting like that.
In which way?
Because they could be sanctioned by the EU, for instance, sanctioned by the Council of Europe. Maybe Orbán today feels strong enough to stand alone, but I think he will notice that that is not a good future for neither him nor his country. And when you ask, should we finance independent media in these countries, I think it's an issue that we should discuss.
Okay.
We have had earlier I used to be a co-rapporteur for Moldova, and at that time Norway paid for a project of reforming the judiciary system. We could also think to organize projects about media, but then it's a bit difficult right now with all this legislation about foreign agents and legislation on media, no more independent media, only pro-government media. So we have to do it in cooperation with the civil society in the respective countries, I think.
Keeping issues in the spotlight. So if the Norwegian Parliament or Norwegian government is vocal about what's happening in Slovakia or Hungary, that in itself, the moral support is very important to us. And one thing I wanted to quickly mention is that I'm very grateful for the support I received, the moral support from colleagues in Norway back a few years ago when it turned out that a handful of Hungarian journalists, including myself, were surveilled with an Israeli spyware. I was contacted by the Pegasus spyware. I was contacted by many Norwegian journalists. I appeared on TV. I got interviewed, and it really felt good to me personally that up here in the north people do care about what's going on in Hungarian media.
Siv, a short comment, and then we open the floor for one question.
Yes, being a journalist is dangerous these days in a growing number of countries, and the number of political prisoners is rising also among journalists. And in this parliament, in the Storting, we have started a support team for a democratic Belarus. And I think this highlighting this situation in countries is very important for the. We can't forget the situation. We need to highlight it. Sanctions is also important, but in the OSCE region, we have no sanctions or mechanism because we are a consensus organization. Thank you.
So maybe to have more seminars like this in the Norwegian Parliament could be one way of highlighting the situation. Do you see any questions in the audience? Yes, one there. Present your full name and your title, please.
Hi, my name is Kia Baluch, and I work with Norsk Pen. Basically, I'm a journalist from Pakistan. I work with The Guardian, The Economist, Al Jazeera, among others. So I have two questions. My number one question is a very personal story. I'm living in exile in Norway now. In 2020, the Reporters Without Border informed me that they have accessed a list which names me, which was issued by the Ministry of Interior in Pakistan. That says that I am involved in anti-Pakistan activities in Norway and Europe, and that directed the Ministry of Pakistani Foreign Affairs to follow me and the intelligence agencies of Pakistan to follow me. We brought this into the notice of the Norwegian police. PST got involved in my case, and also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs got involved. But shamefully, here we are talking about the freedom of speech and freedom of expression. The Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, then the foreign minister, she sent me a letter in writing that we won't tolerate any kind of threats on Norwegian soil, but we don't want to publicly comment on that. So when a journalist is living in exile, he is being threatened. The foreign ministry does not want to comment publicly on it. I think this is something very serious we have to think about. Why the government do not want to publicly comment on these issues. There are many journalists from China, Iran living in exile who feel threatened, but government never comment about that. The second question is that recently we have seen that the Norwegian government has cut the quota from 1,000 to 200 for the writers, journalists, and activists who are being threatened. Before it was 1,000, now they have decreased the number to 200 only. So what is the Labour Party's stand on this? Thank you.
Okay, then we go to the Labour Party then.
Yes, I think the first question, that is an issue that could be debated in the Parliamentary Assembly in Norway right now, because now there is a debate going on about the speech of the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Yes.
And, just a couple of weeks ago, we had an interpellation debate in the Storting about political prisoners that was initiated by us in the Norwegian delegation.
And to the question about why there is only 200.
Yeah, that was the second question.
On the quota for next year, yeah.
Yes, and the reason for that suggestion from the government is that we are receiving very, very high numbers of refugees from Ukraine these days, 85,000 so far, and that's why we have lowered the number of refugees
Okay.
through the United Nations system.
But that might be changed since you are negotiating the budget with the social left.
I can't say anything
Okay.
about that now
Ah,
because
okay.
I don't know what will be the result, but maybe
Let's
that
see.
will be an issue
Let's see.
during negotiations.
Okay, thank you for this session. Then we have a short coffee break, and feel free to have coffee with these two guests from Slovakia and Hungary. Thank you.